Gravity Falls may be gone, but its legacy won't be forgotten anytime soon. It will go down in history as one of the best animated shows of all time, but just because it was a cartoon doesn't mean it was just for children. In fact, there were loads of moments when the show got scary or inappropriate enough that it was a wonder why it was labeled a kid's show at all. Here's our list talking about all the times Gravity Falls proved itself as inappropriate for children. Let's get into it right now. You have to wonder what the young kids watching Gravity Falls thought when Mabel brought up Dipper's disturbing internet history in a throwaway line during the show's second season. We wonder how many people's minds went to a dirty place upon hearing it or kept it PG. If your mind is all rainbows and butterflies, you might just assume Dipper's fascination with odd and strange happenings in Gravity Falls leads to some pretty weird searches. Things like gnomes who dress up as people or terrifying robot lake monsters is definitely enough to put you on some lists. But if your thoughts are dirtier than Grunkle Stan's recliner, then you might have a better idea of what a preteen might be searching for on the internet. But for Mabel to know about it? Come on, Dipper! Everyone knows you gotta keep things incognito. Or at least learn how to delete your browser history. I'm not speaking from experience or anything. When you think of shows for children, you might think of heartwarming tales of friendship and camaraderie, with an extra dose of valuable life lessons peppered in once in a while. On the surface, Gravity Falls looks like a kid's show with all the aforementioned elements, but it's also a show featuring severed animal heads with blood dripping from their eye sockets as they torment our heroes. Still sound like this show is for kids? If seeing an evil zombie Bambi came to life wasn't bad enough, the Season 2 episode Northwest Mansion Mystery takes things even further when a flaming skeleton ghost crawls out of the fire with an axe embedded in its head. You don't see that every day. How did the scene get past Disney censors? Were they all asleep at the wheel on this one? We're adults and we're even slightly traumatized by this episode. Let's take a look at the Mystery Shack for a moment. It's a great name, simple and to the point. Its moniker tells traveling dumb tourists with bundles of cash in their pockets that it's the perfect place to stop in for overpriced souvenirs and probably defective knickknacks. Sorry, Suze, we just don't trust anything sold there to actually work. But the history behind it is actually much darker. In an instance of creator Alex Hirsch leaving tiny details to slip past the Disney censors, the episode A Tale of Two Stans had a flashback that included a newspaper clipping that read, "Murder Hut changes to Mystery Shack." Can you imagine how different the show would have been if it kept its original name? Maybe Dipper and Mabel would have gotten out of there quick because Mystery Shack sounds like a fun tourist trap, while Murder Hut is the place you avoid like the plague. After all the weird and traumatizing events the characters witnessed throughout the course of Gravity Falls, it's understandable that some of them might need a little extra help to take the edge off. But giving Mabel a drinking problem? That's just too much, man. Okay, it's not exactly a real drinking problem, but in Season 2, Episode 3, The Gulf War, we see a defeated Mabel hit the equivalent of a bottle to drown her sorrows. As Mabel's war with Pacifica gets heated, Mabel comes home, takes the OJ container, pours herself a quick shot and downs it, making the face of it burning so good. Now her reaction tells us the orange juice has either been expired for 2 years, which given Grunkle Stan's cheapness wouldn't put that past him, or maybe the show is trying to imitate Mabel taking an actual shot of alcohol. Suze was always the heart of Gravity Falls. The lovable dum-dum was always there to provide a bit of levity and heart to almost every situation. It's hard not to like the guy. So does that mean everyone in his family is as kind-hearted as him? Apparently not. In the Seuss-centric episode, Seuss and the Real Girl, Seuss talks with his abuelita, who just wants Seuss to find companionship before she dies and goes to heaven to live with the angels. Seuss chimes in, and with Grandpa, but then his grandma reveals the dark truth. She quickly says, "No, he's not there," while looking towards the ground, which can only mean one thing: that Seuss' grandpa is still alive and fled south to South America. Okay, no, it probably means the other thing, which makes us wonder what Seuss' grandpa did to earn a one-way ticket to an eternity of fire and brimstone. Before the internet took over our entire lives, there were these things called magazines that had a bunch of pictures and words in them that people would flip through. They didn't even need Wi-Fi, so we understand if today's kids didn't quite understand what Dipper saw in Grunkle Stan's secret stash of stuff. All kidding aside, it's not the magazines itself that weren't meant for kids, but rather the content of them. As Dipper searches through Grunkle Stan's things, he finds an assortment of odd items, like brass knuckles and cologne. But the thing that really grossed out Dipper is Stan's magazine collection, which includes titles like Lady Swimwear and Fully Clothed Women. If you're an adult, you know exactly what these magazines are a reference to, and if you're a kid, well, just go ahead and ask your dad if he has any more of his old magazines. He'll be thrilled. Usually in a children's show, there isn't a whole lot of death. Remember Squidward eating all those Krabby Patties and then exploding? Yeah, he's just fine. Gravity Falls, on the other hand, doesn't mind making death a huge punchline and making sure it sticks. In Season 1 episode The Inconveniencing, Dipper tags along with Wendy and her teenage friends as they sneak into an old, closed-down convenience store. They soon find themselves attacked by angry spirits who appear to hate teenagers with a fiery passion. By episode's end, we learn exactly why in a flashback. The kind old couple running the store were so taken aback by teenagers' style and choice of music that they were hit with a double heart attack and both died. We even see it happen. We think it's safe to say the death of two old people isn't exactly kid-friendly. Sometimes words just aren't enough to express how we're feeling. Sometimes only explicit hand gestures can truly get across what we're feeling towards someone who's making our blood boil. But what happens when you don't have any hands to make that happen? In the Season 2 episode, Little Gift Shop of Horrors, Grunkle Stan tells us 3 totally true, completely trustworthy stories as he tries to convince a customer to buy some merchandise from the Mystery Shack. One of those tales deals with the evil witch who steals Grunkle Stan's hands. After fighting to get them back, Grunkle Stan tells the kooky witch that he wants his hands back because there's a certain gesture he wants to show her, and we're about 90% sure he doesn't mean a peace sign. Anyone who's been stuck in traffic when someone cuts you off knows exactly what gesture he's referring to. Grunkle Stan looks like a man just dying to let out a string of expletives at every turn, but being on a kid show and constantly looking after Mabel and Dipper, he at least has the decency to not swear around them. But what happens when no one else is around? Well, we're pretty sure Grunkle Stan uses more colorful language than we're used to. When Dipper and Mabel are trying to find out more about their Grunkle, they find security footage of Stan moving heavy objects. When he drops something on his foot, he celebrates the fact that there are no kids around and lets out a hearty "son of a" before Dipper and Mabel quickly shut off the feed. This joke was clearly meant for adults of the show who know all too well where that sentence was going. And of all the kids watching this, he was clearly going to say "son of a nutcracker." Yeah, son of a nutcracker. How could such a goofy monster end up being so spine-tingling? The Summerween trickster is a mysterious entity that was formed from loser candy and desires to seek revenge for all the candy that has been ignored and discarded by Gravity Falls children. In his disguised form, he looks like a scarecrow that's hit the gym, but forgot about leg day. His patchwork suit jacket and yellow jack-o'-lantern face just gives us goosebumps all over, and the way he lurks and watches the kids is seriously not okay for children. Of course, his true form is scary too, with it being a giant mound of discarded candy, but it's his disguised form that really makes us squint through our fingers. Good thing it's a monster made of candy because Seuss has an empty pit where his stomach should be, which is scary in its own right because Seuss is eating a living, sentient being. If we're talking about pure nightmare fuel on Gravity Falls, look no further than the dreaded Shapeshifter from early on in Season 2. It's so disturbing looking, you're left wondering why something so terrifying is on a children's show and not some late-night R-rated horror movie marathon. At first, it takes the shape of a man who claims to be the author of the journals, a fact which makes Dipper very happy, and it sounds like Mark Hamill, so why wouldn't you trust something like that? Eventually, the truth is revealed and the Shapeshifter starts morphing into new things in truly disgusting fashion. The worst is when he morphs into a Dipper and Mabel hybrid creature. Hey, it might sound cute on paper, but trust us when we say the results are terrifying. Good luck in therapy, kids, after watching this episode. Everyone knows exactly how babies are made thanks to Grunkle Stan. The grumpy old man breaks it down in honest, simple terms. Apparently, you invite a girl over to watch a horror movie, and after she's spooked, she'll cuddle up next to you and bam! Suddenly a child is born that you get to raise and will eventually ruin your entire life. Alright, maybe that's not exactly what we learned in health class, but we like Grunkle Stan's explanation better. Good thing we don't like horror movies that much, which explains why we don't have children. But does anyone else get the feeling that Grunkle Stan was being way too specific in his explanation about this? Is it crazy to think that he has some offspring out there roaming around? We wouldn't put it past Gravity Falls to make a joke like this, only for it to come true at some future point. If you expect the Love God to be anything else than a chubby music festival attending wannabe rocker who sounds a lot like Bender from Futurama, then you're gonna be disappointed. In the Season 2 episode simply titled The Love God, the Woodstock Festival comes to Gravity Falls, attracting all sorts of hippies and music lovers who probably use herbal plant extracts as deodorant and owns one pair of underwear. Ugh. It might be a little stereotypical, but usually these types of festivals and free-spirit individuals are more prone to herbal-based recreational activities than most places. But we never expect there to be such an overt reference in the show. We can't believe how it got past Disney's censors, but as Dipper and Mabel explore the Love God's van, there's clearly what looks like a bong sitting in the back. Hey, what happens at Woodstock stays in Woodstock, right? One very interesting background detail that kids definitely wouldn't notice is prominent in practically every episode. Above Stan's recliner is a backlit painting that has a waterfall on one side and a glass panel with an H on it on the other. Most people would look at this and call it just a piece of decor, but eagle-eyed adults might see it as something different. There's practically an exact match between Grunkle Stan's piece of art and the real-life Ham's Brewery art pieces. The only thing different is that instead of the beer logo, it just has an H. Now, what does this mean? Is there some secret code that has to do with that particular letter? Calm down, Gravity Falls conspiracy theorists. It's most likely a reference to Alex Hirsch, the show's creator. But it's still interesting on a Disney show there's such a big reference to a famous brewing company. Grunkle Stan sitting Dipper down to explain puberty after he catches him spying on girls is already traumatizing enough, but it's even worse when you add the fact that it's actually Mabel trapped inside Dipper's body after a freak electrical carpet accident, and the book that Grunkle Stan reads to Mabel is called Why Am I Sweaty? Your Body Explained in Horrifyingly Uncomfortable Detail. We don't see the full scene, but we can only imagine Grunkle Stan just explain baby making in his own specific Grunkle Stan way, which is just gross to think about. We feel bad if this was actually Dipper, but knowing it's Mabel instead, poor girl! It's only fitting that the scene ends with Mabel in Dipper's body traumatized and kissing her childhood goodbye. Now we're really curious to see what exactly is in that book, but based on the title, maybe we're actually okay with leaving it alone for now. Gravity Falls loves quick gags that leave a terrifying impression. Need proof? Just look at the head that's always screaming. We all know Bill Cipher is the ultimate big bad of the series, and he certainly earns his credentials as a worthy villain with his sadistic sense of humor. As Bill taunts Dipper and tries to intimidate him, he offers a prize of the head that's always screaming. Then poof, the severed head that won't stop shouting its hypothetical lungs out appears to startle Dipper, only for Bill to snap it out of existence in horrifying fashion. The head that's always screaming suddenly gets a lot more to scream about, as we watch its skin and muscle layer peel away until everything disappears. Anyone who thinks this scene was for kids might want to get their eyes checked. On the plus side, it's a lovely anatomy lesson about the human head, huh? Dawn of the Dead, The Walking Dead, Shaun of the Dead, all great additions to the zombie genre, but none of them had zombies whose heads exploded with the power of three-part harmony. That's the beauty of a show like Gravity Falls, which could get away with such a silly concept and make it awesome instead. Though we gotta say, watching the zombies' head pops like slime-filled water balloons after Dipper, Mabel, and Grunkle Stan rock out to some karaoke is pretty graphic. Sure, they're mindless husks who want to devour brains left and right, but we see them wither and growl in pain, with even one ripping its own ears off to escape the noise. But overall, we think that's pretty rude. Mabel and Dipper and Grunkle Stan aren't bad enough singers to cause their audience's head to explode? Well, maybe Grunkle Stan is. If you weren't convinced that Gravity Falls was actually scarier than almost any horror movie out there, then you clearly don't know about the hide behind. Although not taking place in an official episode, Gravity Falls released a series of shorts called Dipper's Guide to the Unexplained, which saw Dipper investigate series of mysteries like decoding Grunkle Stan's tattoo, or why a certain Gravity Falls resident always faces left, but the final short takes it up a notch by having Dipper investigate the hide behind, a mysterious local legend that no one can ever prove exists. The reason it remains elusive is its ability to remain out of sight. Although Dipper comes up short in his investigation, the audience gets a clear look at the spooky, slender, walking shadow that's able to hide behind small trees. Good luck walking through the forest anymore without thinking about what's lurking where you can't see. Ugh. How could one idyllic fantasy suddenly go so wrong so fast? It all looks pretty and shiny with a singing stuffed animal tree and a giggle creek that lets out a cute chuckle whenever you touch it, but Dipper just won't accept it. That is, until Wendy shows up and starts saying everything that Dipper wants to hear. She fills Dipper's head with idea of Dipper being her perfect guy, if only he was older, and then proposes the idea that maybe the Fantasyland they're trapped in could make him a few years older and then they could finally be together. Dipper almost falls for it, but quickly snaps out of his love daze to recognize the thing talking to him isn't Wendy. Then we see not Wendy quickly dissolve into an oozing mass of wiggly bugs. Can you imagine the love of your life turning into a puddle of cockroaches? Sounds terrifying, not to mention the evil talking stuffed animal tree that comes alive just moments later. Now our favorite childhood stuffed animal can't even bring extra comfort thanks to this nightmare scenario. Preston Northwest is the type of rich jerk we wouldn't mind seeing taken down a peg, but we have to say he didn't deserve his grotesque predicament at the end of the series. When Bill makes his move to take over Gravity Falls, a few concerned citizens stand up to him. But Preston Northwest takes a different approach to things. He openly embraces a tyrannical rule and offers to be one of Bill's horsemen of the apocalypse. Bill's response doesn't seem very enthusiastic about Preston's offer, and the Dream Demon quickly shuffles the functions of every hole on his face. His nose is where his ears should be, his eyes are now his ears, and he has one eyeball where his mouth should be. Preston's new grotesque look causes him to scream and wither in pain, which tells us that Preston might not be too happy over the whole face shuffling. And that's our list of the most inappropriate and scariest instances in Gravity Falls history. What moments do you think are inappropriate for children? Let us know in the comments below and be sure to subscribe to CBR for more awesome content.